For years, American politicians have talked about China like it's the final boss in a video game. Every speech is the same. China's growing stronger. China is spreading its influence in Africa. China runs a global spy network. Apparently over there they also got cutting-edge trains now. Terrifying stuff. Most American politicians act all shocked like China just snuck up on us overnight. They've been building cities, factories, infrastructure. Meanwhile, we can't even decide whether a child should get a free lunch at school or not. Ever since Obama's pivot to Asia, every drone on cable news is panicking about how China is expanding influence. And every politician suddenly becomes an expert on China whenever the economy's bad. Factory closes. China. Stock market unpredictable. China. Desperate people getting hooked on drugs. China. Your kid vaping behind the Applebee's. Somehow also China. And that's what countries do when they feel another country catching up. They start making them sound scary, because fear works. You can't get people fired up by going, well, there are complicated shifts in global economics. Nobody cares. But if you go, the Chinese are coming for the future. Now everybody's losing sleep. Fear gets some guy in Ohio punching a microwave because he found out it was assembled in Shenzhen. Americans are told China is authoritarian the same way children are told there's a monster under the bed. Constant repetition. Be afraid. Be very afraid. And they always make it sound like one dude controls literally everything. One guy micromanages 1.4 billion human beings. Yeah, right. And every China-related documentary narrator or podcaster does their best to feign being deeply concerned. They say, in China, the government watches everything. Meanwhile, your phone already knows you were thinking about buying socks. And yet, our government still pretends corporations and billionaires are just distant bystanders watching politics from the sidelines. It's funny because Americans respect historical figures like Jefferson and Lincoln. But if those guys showed up today, our ruling class would probably call them extremists immediately. Jefferson looked at rich elites and basically said, hey, maybe don't let these guys run everything. And Lincoln saying labor is more important than capital. Nowadays, if you say that, Secretary of the Treasury Scott Bessent would be immediately dragged onto CNN to explain why career exposure opportunities are actually a valuable learning experience. If Lincoln saw modern America, giant corporations lobbying Congress, billionaires funding everything, investment firms buying entire neighborhoods, the guy would probably stare quietly for 10 seconds and go, well, that seems fucked up. MLK said political rights don't mean much if people are stuck in poverty, which makes sense. A guy working 3 jobs while worrying about rent probably isn't sitting around going, well, at least I have excellent conceptual liberties. China's government points to the fact that hundreds of millions of people there moved out of extreme poverty over the last few decades. Meanwhile, in America, millions of people work full-time and still panic every time the check engine light comes on. Everybody talks about freedom until the dentist says, this procedure isn't covered. So the whole debate gets a little complicated. Americans talk a lot about freedom, but if a person can't afford housing, health care, or basic stability, eventually you gotta ask what freedom even means. Xi Jinping once said democracy should solve real problems for ordinary people, instead of just giving them slogans during election season. In America, election season lasts about 14 years now and mostly consists of billionaires explaining why the other millionaire is dangerous. Nobody's saying China is perfect. Every country has issues. America got billionaires building bunkers while regular people are Googling, can cough syrup expire? Nobody's exactly operating at peak civilization at the moment. The point is Americans are taught to see China as this completely foreign enemy without ever asking whether some of the things China focuses on, poverty reduction, infrastructure, long-term planning, are things Americans themselves usually say they want. Instead of blindly accepting every scary headline about China, people should probably ask a few harder questions. Like, why are we constantly encouraged to fear China? Who benefits from that fear? And why does American media spend 24 hours a day talking about problems overseas while half the country here can't afford rent without developing a side hustle driving Uber or selling candles on eBay? At a certain point, you gotta wonder if the foreign threat is also serving as a very convenient distraction. Maybe China's rise scares the American ruling class partly because it forces the country to confront its own problems. Because it's hard to keep yelling, "We're the greatest system on earth," while people are drowning in debt and arguing with insurance companies over inhalers. And once Americans start comparing what the country says it believes in, suddenly the problem isn't just China getting stronger. It's that the sales pitch at home about capitalism lifting all boats isn't hitting like it used to. Please consider subscribing if you liked the video.